That feeling when you're on a jog and your phone rings, and as you fumble to grab it from your fanny pack, it goes flying down an embankment.
Wah, wah. I was hoping for a tennis partner, but instead I got tennis elbow.
I finally got my new driver's license that had been going to an old address since 2018.
Nice. Remember before times when you could see people's rusting bitch faces? I miss that.
Me too. Have such a good day. Oh, hello, world. We didn't see you there.
Why are you hiding from us?
Get out
What
of
are
the
you not
shadows.
telling us?
In fact, what are you doing here?
Hello, patrons.
Hello.
We're here to help you have such a good day. And if we fail at this, then we'll just go back to bed. So you let us know one way or another.
Exactly. Our show is a demand, really. Have such a good day. We will take no substitutes. But if for any reason we fail, go to bed.
Just pull those covers over your head and everything will be fine in the morning.
Oh,
Sarah, episode 98, yo.
98, man. 98, the year I graduated college.
Can you even remember what we talked about in episode 1? I gotta start listening to some of those old
gosh.
episodes. I think we talked
Yeah.
about Target for a while.
Did we? Yeah. I still love it. Still love Target. In fact, my Target love
Some
has
things
only
never
grown.
change.
Yeah. We started the show in 2017. believe
Wow,
it or
good
not.
memory.
Yeah, I remember because, I don't know, I just remember these things. And yeah, 4 years ago, Heather. 4 years.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
I know. And we've had a little, hiatus here and there, but
they were short.
we're inching towards 100 episodes, and it is so exciting. And
It's so
I
cool.
just
I mean,
love
what
it.
do we do? Like the 100 episodes is quite an achievement. How do we sort of recognize that or celebrate that? It's just, I'm so proud of us.
It's funny, I listen to a variety of other podcasts, and they have various schedules. The majority of the podcasts I listen to are weekly, but some of them are more than once a week. I obviously co-host Daily Tech News Show, which is every weekday, so it's 5 shows a week. And, so that's obviously if someone subscribed to that show, they're getting a lot of shows. And then there's others that are just, they're kind of seasonal. Episodes come out when they come out type of a thing. And we... on this show, we talk about the episode numbers, and some shows emphasize that more than others. This podcast, Bodega Boys, that I've been listening to forever with Jesus and Mero, I feel like they've been on for so long because I just really like the show and I never miss one. And when they say, oh, it's like episode 300 or whatever, I'm like, that's it? It feels like you guys have been doing more than, I don't exactly remember what episode they're on, but it's funny how I have no real sense of what's a lot of episodes anymore.
No, I
because
know.
100 sounds like a lot too.
Yeah, it does. But it also feels like we've been doing more than 100. Time has no boundary, Sarah.
It's a flat circle. I know.
Like the earth.
Surprise. Yeah, I know. You get to the edge, you'll fall right off. It's just that we haven't gotten there yet. That's why scientists don't know what they're talking about. I'm kidding, of course. Please do not send us angry emails about flat Earth.
See, this is exactly what we were telling you earlier. This is the show where we unpack the absurdity, emphasis on absurdity of everyday life for your entertainment.
Indeed, we do. And by the way, I was just kidding. If you are upset about flat earthers, do email us because I'd like to know where you stand on the issue. hi@havesuchagoodday.com.
Can't wait for these emails to roll in.
Just email us about anything. We love to get feedback. I mean, Heather and I might spin our wheels a bit, but the more feedback we get from you, the better.
We enjoy spinning our wheels. That's the problem.
We do.
It's a pleasant experience.
It's like a Jeep in mud. Just we're going to get out eventually, but the wheels are going to spin and it's going to get really muddy.
That's right.
So I don't know how your week has been, Heather. When we convened in episode 97, we had just seen each other. You were visiting my neck of California, which was super great. And that seems like such a long time ago now, but it was really just one weekend ago.
Aye.
I know. The weeks, They keep on
They
coming.
blur.
They do blur. But I've had a pretty good week. Sometimes when I sit down when we're about to do the show and I think, okay, well, what are my standouts from the week? And I really have to rack my brain sometimes because there are weeks that, I'm just sort of plodding along. And there's, there might be events that happen. And then there are weeks where I'm like, nothing really out of the ordinary happened. I did my stuff. I'm very routine based a person. You know, I went on long walks, I worked, but I did have kind of a cool week work-wise. I get that it's very cyclical where I will know people who know my line of work is, you know, producing podcasts, you know, audio, video, that kind of stuff, you know, production work. And they'll say, hey, you know, I know somebody who's kind of interested. Can I make an intro? And I always say yes. And some of the time, those conversations that I end up having with somebody, which is usually something like a 30-minute phone call, you know, just to sort of explore the idea. Sometimes I get off the phone and I'm like, you know, that was just free advice I gave.
Oh, all the time.
They're clearly not anywhere near, you know, wanting to hire me in any capacity. Even if they wanted to down the road, it's like they're not even there yet.
Nope.
They don't even really know the lingo yet, and that sort of thing. Or, you know, so that happens sometimes where I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's goodwill, and I try not to get too bristly about it. But I had somebody who, again, it was a mutual friend, but I didn't know the woman that I was eventually going to talk to, and the mutual friend had said, hey, Sarah, you know, is it cool if I intro you? And I said, yeah, sure. And so she followed up, the woman that I didn't know, and said, great, you know, I've heard great things about you. Can we schedule some time for a quick chat? And I go, yeah, sure. And she schedules me for a 45-minute phone call. You know, I get the calendar invite, and I'm like, in what world is 45 minutes a quick chat?
That's called quick?
Well, quick to me is 10.
Oh, yeah, totally.
It's 10-minute chat. You know,
Yeah.
we can get through some stuff in 10 minutes.
Sure.
45 minutes when I, you know, also have other, you know, I can't carve out 45 minutes
You're
just
not getting
any
paid
time
for
of
it.
day.
No.
There are certain times of day where I can, but I mean, it gets a little tight in there. And so it was not a big deal, but it just, you know, I just sort of have to laugh sometimes. And again, you know, I got off the phone call and I was like, well, that could go somewhere or not.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a big time commitment to just, you know, tell somebody, oh, here are all the things you need, and you know that they're taking their notes, and then you might never hear from them again.
Oh, that happens all the time. And I wonder too, like I used to have these experiences constantly as a gig worker, as a producer. And I would imagine that it's got to be similar with other industries, you know? I mean, because think about it. You need, like, it's consultation. You need that initial understanding. And sometimes, yeah, you do feel kind of raped of, like, your knowledge, and you don't get paid for it. And I think it's kind of like part of it, unfortunately. But I totally feel you.
Yeah,
I have been in that position
I know
a lot.
a lot of folks who, not just video production people, and you know, these days a lot of my conversations are audio production. It's not even video based, like this show, for example. But I do have friends who do a lot of consultation work, you know, and they'll say to me, nothing's free. I mean, you charge for everything. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if someone's like, hey, I want to do a podcast, maybe there's a fit here. I'm not going to be like, well, I won't get on the phone with you for half an hour unless you pay me. That feels a little, I don't know. I'm not at the caliber, I don't feel, where I would do that and not turn someone off. But it is case by case. And there are definitely times where I'm like, yeah, that was a waste of my time.
Yep.
And who knows, it could turn into something later, but it probably won't, because they usually don't.
I think I've had to tell people, like, that wanted to get on a second call where I felt kind of like, you took a lot of information from me on the first call. Like, I've been like, I definitely need to be paid as a consultant here. And it does turn people off. It's kind of like, well, screw you, you know, we'll find somebody else kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. The thing is that having worked with so many people of varying experience levels, and you know, I mean, I have a ton of experience. Am I the right person for every job? Of course not. I also, you know, there's only so much. If it's going to be a certain amount of time and energy on my part, it's like there's only so low I can go. So there are certain budgets where I'm like, listen, if that's your budget, I'm not going to tell you that you need to pay more, but I can't work for that budget. You know, it's just simple math. Yeah. And, you know, those are times where I'm like, yeah, the sooner I know, the better. Totally. And then I can try to refer you to somebody if someone comes up. And that's happened a few times. There was a nonprofit. This is not that recently, but it was a nonprofit based out of San Francisco, and someone had put me in touch with them, and again, we got through at least a couple of phone calls and some back and forth emails. And, they kept saying, well, what are your rates? And I'm like, well, what's your budget? Because I can massage sort of what I give you based on what you've got.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to give you a subpar product, but if you say like, I've got $100 versus $5,000, well, you do different things based on the budget, and their budget came back where I was like, I mean, it's almost working for free.
Exactly.
It's just not something that I can do, but I'm not offended. If that's your budget, then you might look elsewhere.
And most of those people don't know what it takes to produce something. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. There's a lot of components. It's, from developing the idea to like producing it and creating it. I mean, it's a huge job. And yes, I think people just don't understand that. And you have to like break that down. Like, that's another thing. You have to be like, and then a lot of clients will be like, well, why is it so expensive? Why do you need that tripod? Why do you need blah, blah, blah? And it's like,
because I'm not a human tripod and people shake, unless you want that look. Oh gosh, I know. It's sometimes I have to laugh. Although I will sometimes throw out a term and someone's like, what's that? And I'm like, oh yeah, right. Right. Yeah. You're not a producer.
It's brutal. I sort of miss the real TV days, like when we were in a like legit TV studio where people knew your language. God, that was fun.
Yeah, a lot of that is, kind of antiquated though.
It is. Totally.
We've all moved on. Well, not all of us. Some people are still in traditional TV studios.
But we are antiquated.
Yeah. Older by the day, Heather. Older by the day. Well, speaking of time and investment, I know we talk a lot about gardening on the show, and contrary to popular belief, we're not actually a gardening podcast, but Heather and I both have thrown ourselves into gardening more than ever these days, which I'm actually enjoying quite a bit. And over the last week, so my whole thing with gardening it was a slow growth process over decades. When I was a kid, my mom, I've talked about this on the show before, my mom she always had a garden. It was vegetables and various plants and flowers. And it was like, she'd go out there and tend to the corn and pull lettuce. And there would be, raspberries, in late summer. And that was super normal. We also just had land, wherever we were living. And that was all a big deal. My dad would rototill it, before she planted the seeds. And there was never one indoor plant in any house that I lived in as a kid. There just wasn't. I mean, I guess because everything was outdoors, so it just wasn't super necessary. But indoor plants were just not a thing that were normal to me. And when I moved out and, lived in various apartments, and I had roommates, in the early days for all of those apartments, it was like there would be a plant here and there. It was someone's plant, or there was a ficus tree in the corner or whatever. And so it was like, oh yeah, they look nice, or they're not doing so well or whatever. But it was like, it wasn't really anything I paid much attention to. And over the years, especially once I started living alone more, or I had, a boyfriend or whatever. And so we were trying to make it it was more homey than kind of like I'm in and out roommate type of a situation. There was a few plants that I, had bought here and there, and, you get a nice colorful pot and you're like, oh, that's nice. It like really brightens up that corner kind of thing. And I have gotten to the point now, also, I notice it more than ever because I live in a very small apartment. I live in the smallest apartment I've ever lived in. I do live alone, so I can spread out and make it my own, but there's not like that many places to put plants. But I have more plants than I've ever had. I have like 20 plants indoors of various sizes and many plants outdoors also. But, and this is I think where you and I differ, Heather, I am a renter. So, and plants are, you can buy like a tiny little succulent for like $5, right? And do what you want with it later. But a plant that's already somewhat mature, where, it's a nice plant, it's in good shape, it's going to take up some space, and it's going to require, but I mean, you got to stay on top of it. It's plants, and then especially the pottery that they end up going into really add up. And I don't like to buy nice plants that I put in the ground because, what am I going to do? Rip them up when I leave? Because I will move eventually. I mean, that's the life of being a renter. I mean, sure, I might stay here for like 5 more years, but even that sounds crazy to me because I never stay anywhere for 5 years.
Yeah.
You know, there's always some reason that I either want to move or I have to move. And so, you know, I'm like, I'm not going to buy a $50 plant and put it in the ground. Like, sure, I'll enjoy it for a while, but then what? You know, do I like have my landlord buy the plant off me? Like, it gets weird when I leave. So it's all kind of like self-contained. And I like it that way because then you can move plants around easily. Yeah. You go like, you know, this plant's getting too much sun in this corner. Let me rejigger this situation. Well, over the weekend, I went a little crazy. And because I was like, I literally do not have room in my home for one more plant, even a small one. It starts to get strange and cluttery, you know? Plants are like, oh, this is so pretty. Everything looks so alive. You know, like what a lush home. You're probably getting a lot of, you know, cool plant oxygen into something where it's like, plant hoarding. Like
there's like a fine line of being like a crazy plant lady.
Yeah, and just it looking sort of messy.
Yeah.
And I suffer from, there's a term, and I don't remember what it is, but I suffer from if there's, you know, a tabletop, something that's on top of something, I want to cover it up with all sorts of trinkets and plants and, you know, like a little jewelry box, you know, where you're like, what? You know, like it's not, you don't need to pile things onto a surface all the time. Sometimes less is more.
Yep.
So, and I also, because of the time of year, and my apartment has a lot of windows and gets a lot of western afternoon sun. So it really cooks the second half of the day, which is nice. I mean, beautiful light and everything. But some of my plants have been suffering because they're just getting too much direct sun.
Yeah.
And I don't have a lot of space in my house for non-direct sun unless it's kind of almost murky. It's like I've got like crazy light, or it's like, well, there's that corner in the bathroom, but like that doesn't really get any sun, you know? And so you've got these plants that are like, you know, you look them up online and it's like happiest in bright indirect light. And I'm like, I don't really have that. It's all direct light except like some weird places like behind a door.
And you don't have shades on your windows, right?
No, I do. But I mean, I don't, I mean, unless it's there. Sometimes in the summer, it's so hot that I will lower certain shades just to like keep the house cool, like even for myself. But I'm not really wanting to close my shades during the day more than I have to. You know, I like it open. So sure, there's some options there, but I have to get creative. Well, anyway, I spent way too much money at one of my favorite nurseries over this last weekend and bought some pots. They have great stuff there and some neat plants. One of the plants that I bought is a mandevilla. Have you ever heard of a mandevilla? Hever.
No, I haven't.
It's also sometimes known as Brazilian jasmine.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's kind of a vine grower, and it has these big, beautiful, it can be like white flowers, pink flowers, red flowers. Mine is red flowers, and they almost look like petunias.
Wow. Do they have is there a scent?
There isn't, but apparently as it kind of matures and a little bit later in the season, there might be. I don't know. But I'm stoked about it. It's a beautiful plant, and it's kind of got, you know, it's in a pot right now. I'm going to need to repot it eventually, but it's got these, you know, these wooden rods that's sort of supposed to stimulate it to kind of grow up and out and start doing its climby thing.
So is this something that's an outdoor flower?
Yeah. It's on my porch right now, and I'm now buying things because everything on my porch is just like, you need like a hardy plant that likes the sun, because it's just
technically the landlord should cover your outdoor plant stuff because they own the property. I mean, that's kind of my situation, where if it's anything that's on the land, then like I cover it as like a landlord, you know what I mean? Like even if it's like a renter that wants to plant a rhododendron garden or something.
Oh, but I'm not planting it. These are in pots that I will take with me.
I see.
Nothing is being planted in the ground because, again, I'm a renter.
Yeah.
This is all my stuff. It's not, I mean, unless there was some, you know, we had made some deal, but I mean, I'm pretty sure my landlord would be like, well, it's yours. You just do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've got new plants, and one of the things I love more than anything is I go to this nursery, and I go to like the plant section where everything is just cooking in the sun there. So I'm like, okay, so these are the plants that I want, right? Because I think I want to put this plant on the deck in this place where it's going to get like 8 hours of sun, and it needs to be able to deal. And then I look, and I don't know lots of species of plants. Some I do, but most I don't. I'm like, what's this? Oh, it's an olive tree. Yeah, of course, it's an olive tree. Or a fig tree, or some sort of like weird peach nectarine hybrid or something. And so I saw these mandavillas, and I'm like, God, that's beautiful. There were like a cluster of them. And, I look, and then I've got like a little app on my phone that helps identify the plant. And, and then I kind of look at like, what does it want for water? Does it need to be misted? How much sun does it want? And I'm like, okay, Mandavilla's checking all the boxes. This is really cool. I'm going to get one of these. So it's upstairs. It's right outside my front door. So every time I come and go, I'm like, so pretty.
I want to see it. Take a picture for me.
I will. I've made a little, my deck was kind of a sad little place that I just sort of used it to, go inside or leave.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I got to make it a little bit more.
I love it.
A little more curb appeal.
You're super smart, Sarah.
Yeah. So it's been fun. Gardening. You're either into it or you're not. So I guess I'm into it.
Well, we're, again, living parallel lives. But, all the rhododendrons that my dad planted over the years, if you don't know what a rhodie is, you should Google it because they're pretty special. I had mentioned, I think this time last year when they bloomed, that they kind of bloom in like a rainbow sequence, which is so interesting. Like the reds pop first, and then it's like the pink, and then the orange, yellow, purples at the end. I don't remember exactly how it goes, but there's tons of them. I mean, we have so many, and some of them smell and some of them don't. And it's interesting. There's this one that's like a light pink, and it smells like a plumeria. It is magical. And you walk by and you really feel like you're on a tropical island because it has that kind of like tropical sweet. But yeah, I'm on the same page with you, Sarah. I did spend a lot of time outdoors this weekend, and I guess it's sort of a love-hate thing for me because it's just so much work, so much physical work. I've had a pretty good week. I've definitely been productive. Again, a lot of it is a blur. I kind of can't remember. I do remember having a really weird dream that my front tooth was cracked down the middle like a hillbilly, and that was a little scary. I don't know what that means. It was probably an anxiety dream because usually when your teeth are cracked, that's anxiety, right? That's like totally obvious.
I don't know. I mean, I believe that anything tooth related, like teeth falling out, is like loss of control. I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of talking out of my ass right now, but I know that I know that like teeth problems is sort of a common dream theme.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, other than that, I've been good. But it's funny. Yeah, yesterday, I really weeded the F out of my garden, and it was actually quite a bit of work. And when I say weeded, not just weeding the weeds, but I'm pulling old vegetable plants that are like annuals that don't really grow beyond their season, and you have to pull them, and they flower and they get really tall. Like a kale plant, for example, becomes like a kale tree, and it has like flowers at the top, and it gets to a point where it's not really producing edible leaves anymore, so you have to pull it, and then you get another starter for a couple bucks, and you replant it, and you re-till the soil, and you fertilize it, and you do all the things. And it's, there's different activities out in the yard that I do, and some are harder than others, like physically. And I created like 8 massive piles of just green waste that I'm hoping my gardener will roll off in the wheelbarrow so I don't have to do it, because I have tennis elbow, and I have never had tennis elbow. In fact, I used to be a competitive tennis player for over 10 years.
I did not know this.
The term. Yeah, that was very sporty. I mean, this was mostly like high school, college years.
Yeah.
And I always heard of like these problems that people had, like my grandmother had bursitis in her arm or in her shoulder or something like that. And I was just like, my elbow hurt the other day, like pretty bad, like the bone. I was like, I must have like run into the wall and just didn't realize it, because, clumsiness happens. But I think it's honestly from gardening, because I'm noticing, and it doesn't have anything to do with like walking or doing yoga. Like I feel like when I put weight on my arms, that's not what makes it hurt. It's like a pulling activity. It's like pulling things out of the ground, using a wheelbarrow. And man, I was out there for a couple hours and I kind of was ready to come in, but I was like, I got to finish this. I got to just push myself. I got to finish this. And what I did was, my greenhouse, so we had planted a lot of stuff in the winter, like lettuce and stuff that we eat a lot of, because in the winter, lettuce doesn't like to be in the cold. So we put them in the greenhouse because it's warmer in there. But new season, it's definitely getting warmer up here. So lettuce just grows way too quickly and it gets all screwed up. So I pulled everything out of the greenhouse. I mean, this was like a huge job. I bought like 5 different types of cucumbers. Which are really fun to grow, by the way, because they're like vines and you have to pin them up the wall and they're really neat. And they're like these really thin vines and then these massive, heavy cucumbers.
Right, where you're like, how did the vine even make this?
I don't get it. Yeah, I'm always like, how does it hold this huge, heavy vegetable? And a lot of cherry tomatoes and hot peppers, some basil. And so my greenhouse is looking really good and I'm really pumped. But after I spent the afternoon doing that, I went upstairs to do some work and to work on like the show for, recording this week. I passed out. I passed out for like 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
On my new window seat, which I'm really excited about. I got a couple really big fluffy pillows for, and it's basically in my office. And it's one of those like where you can like read a book and lay down fully horizontal. And it's right below a couple windows looking out to the ocean. And man, was it heavenly. That gardening, I think it burns a lot more calories than I ever thought.
Oh, I know it does because I wear a fitness tracker and, I'm a little obsessive about this, but, I have a certain calorie goal and it's like, it's not so much about, because I don't even count the calories that I'm eating. I did that for a while and I was like, this is too much, like I don't care enough to crunch all these numbers, but I know in general, if I burn 2,000 calories in a day, I've been pretty active.
Wow.
That's just, that's like a jog, maybe some, like pulling weeds or something else that is, I'm moving constantly. I'm, or I'm I don't know, like I'm doing something in my studio where I'm lifting things and moving them around. And then there's an afternoon something with the dog, because he's got to go out again. It's like, if I'm having a nice active day and I'm running errands and stuff, about 2,000 calories, that's a good day for me.
I should do something where, because I was really curious, because I was out there for like 3 hours. I was sweating. But yeah, I also think part of the elbow problem is, it's quite painful actually, is an ergonomic problem, because I'm kind of in flux right now because I'm going to be moving probably in the next couple of weeks. So my current podcasting setup, it has changed. I'm still recording from my office, but I'm sitting on a stool now because I took my desk chair home. I needed something a little more comfortable. So I'm like, I have a very weird ergonomic situation when we record. And when I go home, I'm sitting at my dad's desk, which I just found out is actually his father's desk. And I was like, why is this desk so small? It's like for a small, very small adult. I can't put my knees under it. It's very uncomfortable. And I'm like, I got to get rid of this desk. This is like, I think it's partially what is screwing up my elbow. Anyway, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I will have a new setup and this tennis elbow will be gone. So yeah, hopefully things will start looking up in that sense.
Well, I hope so. I've heard the term tennis elbow. Of course I always think like, oh, because you're playing too much tennis, and like, sure, it's like there are lots of different ways that you can have tennis elbow. I've got this.
Exactly.
I had many times mentioned that I had the shoulder injury last November, and 6 months later, I guess it's 6 months later now, right? Yeah. Almost exactly, I am almost 100%. It doesn't bother me at all. And I mean, I'm doing strenuous like aerobic stuff, especially when I'm doing my VR workouts that is like very arm and shoulder based. And like, I'm cool now. I had to baby it for a while, and I was a little worried about doing more damage, and I'm fine. But it will ache sometimes in the middle of the night, and it always aches when I first get up in the morning. It's not like shooting pain. It's just an ache. And it's like, it has something to do with blood flow and being horizontal, because it just doesn't bother me during the day at all. But it still is this it's not an it is an ache where like if I have to get up and pee, or I don't know, I'm just like getting comfortable in bed but I'm awake, briefly, I'll feel it where I'm like, I have to get comfortable for my shoulder, and in the morning it just always aches a little bit, and I'm used to it now and I know it will go away, so I kind of just deal, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe the ache will also go away like the pain did, and it's just going to take a while, but it's also sort of just a part of my life now.
Oh yeah, totally. And that's you just kind of have to live with it. And I think that that's actually part of an aging thing where you just kind of have to live with your aches and pains. I mean, maybe that's what we're going through.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it could be worse, right? It's like, I've been so lucky where it's like I know people who have like a bad knee, and it's like, oh, well, I mean, I like jogging, so it's like you have a bad knee and you don't do that anymore, where there's a brace situation, or you have to ice it, or or hips or ankles, or there are all sorts of things. Although I will say, in the early days of the bad shoulder, I was kind of freaked out, where I was like, do I really like not have a good working arm ever again? Because you kind of can't imagine it not hurting because it's so bad. But I was lucky enough that my body, jumped back into gear, and it also kickstarted my my vitamin intake, because I had kind of slacked, where I'm like, what does it matter? And it kind of does. So
it does.
Yeah, I'm back on the vitamin sauce.
Me too. I know I go in and out for sure. Because then I'm like, are these even working? What if you're paying all this money and they're not?
Well, I mean, there's a certain amount of certification. I mean, depending on what kind of vitamins you buy. But then there's also the, promotes good sleep asterisk. And, and the asterisk always says like, this is not evaluated by the FDA. So you're like, okay, well, like some people think this, and there's probably a few studies to back it up, but it's not, classified, specifically by the people who, also classify things like Valium or whatever. But yeah, I also feel like if you're eating as healthily as possible, you're mostly getting all the nutrition that you need in any given day. But it's nice for me to it's not like an excuse to just like eat like garbage and be like, but I took my multivitamin this morning. But it kind of like, I don't know, there's like a sense of, I don't know, it's like a well-being sense where I'm like, it's just, because I don't eat the exact same thing every day. Sometimes I'm like, I didn't really eat a lot of greens today, but I'm still kind of getting what I feel like is decent nutrition, and it's all part of the cycle.
It really is. Well, it sounds like you have a really healthy lifestyle right now, Sarah.
It is pretty healthy. I have my moments, but I'm definitely, it's also the weather. The weather's so,
perks you up.
It perks you up. It's, it's gotten pretty warm here during the day, but it's not stiflingly hot the way it will be later this summer. It is, I think it was like low 80s yesterday, and I was out and about. I did a lot of gardening and driving around. Otis has got his head out of the sunroof, and we're just like loving life.
Cute.
So yeah, it's great weather to feel motivated.
I love it. I feel the same way. Yeah, I'm definitely happier. I like the sunshine.
Me too. Something about that vitamin D. Well, speaking of cars and sunroofs and driving around doing things, I have my car is a leased car. And I've had the last 1, 2, 3 cars I've had have been leases, and like 3-year leases. So it's I've been doing this thing for a while, and it's kind of funny because my dad, when he was alive last, he was a elementary school teacher, but before he had gone back to college and gotten his teaching credential, he had not finished college. So when I was a kid, he worked jobs that did not require degrees, such as selling cars. And he was, he didn't like the job and eventually went on to do other things, which is great for him because who wants to have a crappy job? But he knew a lot about selling cars and buying cars and what exactly a dealership can offer you and what they can't and why they lie and, all of that stuff. And so he was always helping me, he obviously helped me get my first car. But over the years, he was, he helped my friends, and he was just very knowledgeable about this, and he kind of knew, certain people still in the industry type of thing. And I mean, he would kill me for leasing a car because, as everybody knows, there are good things and bad things about leases.
It's renting. Yeah.
Yeah, but the bad thing is there is, there's no equity there. You are renting a car that is not yours. And sure, at the end of your lease, you will have the option to purchase the car, but it's not as if you've been doing car payments, which is traditional financing. You're still overpaying. And, most people lease because they're like, I want a new car that I otherwise wouldn't, be able to afford. And after a few years, I can just get another new car. So you've got
with new technology.
Yeah, it's like, and there's less commitment, right? It's like it's hard for me, especially because right now I'm driving a Volvo. I love my Volvo, but when I leased it, I had never had a Volvo before. And the idea of buying something that's relatively expensive, I mean, Volvos are not, budget cars, was, first of all, outside my budget. And also I'm like, do I want this car for 15 years? I don't know yet. And so leasing is great for people like me who are somewhat non-committal about this sort of thing. And my living and driving situation does change because I am a renter and I move around a lot. So I am in my final year of this current lease. So next March is my deadline for either, I either get another Volvo. The dealership that I got it from is in LA. I don't even know how that's going to work out. Maybe I can turn it in somewhere up here. I haven't even looked into that yet. Yeah. But or I have other options. Do I buy a used car? Do I buy it? Because I do love the idea of being like, oh, I buy something, I treat it well. Eventually, I'm done with my car payments. Like my mom. I mean, she hasn't paid a car payment in like 100 years because she has an old Honda CR-V that's in like excellent shape. Yeah. And it's not new and exciting, but it's like there's literally nothing wrong with it. And it's free. Well, I mean, except gas and upkeep and stuff like that. But I mean, that's nice. Yeah. So I kind of go back and forth, but I also know that I can't have, this quote, exciting, cool car just based on my, my humble salary, and that sort of thing. It's just not going to happen. I mean, even when I do the numbers, I'm like, $800 a month. Are you crazy? Like, what? Who's paying that kind of money for a car? I can't do that. I mean, even like over like 60 months or something. So,
so what are you thinking?
I don't know. I mean, I obviously have time to think about it, but I have, I've put some, I've put a little thought into, okay, over the next, I should really have a plan by year's end, a solid plan. And I know I have options. And if I know what I want, you obviously you can do some due diligence and see where you can get the best deal, because there are deals to be had. Sure. And I'm not a great haggler, but I do know, thank you, Dad. I know that I have wiggle room, even when they say you don't, you do. And you walk away and they'll come back usually. And, if not, then you talk to somebody else. And that's actually how I ended up with the car that I have now. I have a, Volvo has, all cars have like various packages, right? But Volvo has this particular package that's in its XC line, which is like SUV line. Like there's a big SUV, there's a midsize, which I have, and there's like kind of a compact SUV. And they have a package called the advanced package. And it's just like, it's so like futuristic and it's expensive. And I was able to like finagle my way into an advanced package version of the car that I'm driving when I leased my car, because it was kind of like the guy just wanted, he needed to like make this sale with me, and I kind of knew it, and I just I wouldn't budge, and it should have been more expensive, as far as my monthly payment for the lease, but I got a good deal. So, and of course now I'm like, well, I can't not have the advanced package, even though I totally could, but I want it.
You get used to things.
You do. Yeah, of course. You're like, well, now I have to have the advanced package and have all these features that I don't really even take advantage of that often. But,
it's nice knowing they're there.
It is. And it all just, again, it so goes back to, I just don't know where I'm going to be in a few years. I can't say. So, here's another thing that I've been thinking of. I've always liked the idea of, getting a Prius hybrid car, and I have friends who have had hybrid cars or do now. And, a lot of them say, the gas mileage isn't as good as you think it'd be. I mean, yeah, you're definitely getting a little bit more bang for your buck, but you get varying responses for that sort of thing. Then there's like pure electric, like the Tesla people. And obviously there are other kinds of electric cars. And most everyone I know is like, yeah, you got to deal with charging. That just needs to be part of your, you have to factor that in, especially on longer trips. But, it's so much cheaper, it drives better, it's quiet, all the things. And so I was thinking, okay, well, I mean, it's probably because a lot of the stuff, especially with, newer models of cars, like Volvo, for example. Volvo has a few hybrid models, but it also has an all-electric model. And, that's more or less, the size and everything of the car that I have now, which I really like because, I live in the woods. I got a dog, potholes everywhere. It's like, I like my sturdy car.
Sure.
Like no sports cars for me for a while. I'm kind of over all that. And well, I never had a sports car, but a small sedan that's like low to the ground. I'm like, I'm not really living in the right place. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got a big old truck out here. And
who wants a golf cart?
Yeah, exactly. Although a few people
I
do
used to
ride
love
around
that
on golf
vibe
carts.
though. I had that Mini Cooper and it was kind of a golf cart feel. And the Audis are kind of like that too. They have kind of like that bumpy ride.
Oh yeah, see, I don't like that. I've never liked that. I want it to feel like I'm on a cloud. But again, it's I'm never gonna feel like I'm on a cloud in the pothole areas that I live in because the city won't fix the roads. But that's a story for another time. So I'm thinking like, okay, well, what if I could get an electric car that is, it's meets my needs otherwise, and I could lease it so I could, again, I'm not committing for a long period of time, but because right now where I live, there is a charger, which is like a charger that's meant for an electric vehicle because the people who used to live here had a Tesla. And a variety of people who come and stay here, Airbnb guests, you see some Teslas.
Sure.
And, they're always saying like, what's the, plug-in situation? And the plug-in situation is that the plug-in is actually in my studio where I don't park my car, because it's a studio, but I could run a cord out to my car and so it's like super fast charging. You can plug a car into just a regular outlet too, but it's going to take longer. You have to have a special voltage thing.
Yeah.
So this is all built in and it's something that I could take advantage of. And, I would just have to figure out with my landlord, okay, what kind of power am I drawing regularly? And, we'd factor that into my rent. I wouldn't be, I would want to be fair about it. But I'm like, man, a 3-year lease, what if a year into it I had to move? And that was always the reason that I never had anything that was plug-in before because I didn't, my last house in LA, I didn't even have a garage. I parked on the street. The house before that, I had a carport, but there wasn't a plug near it. And there were 10 other units in my building. My landlord probably would have been like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
That's not going to fly. And, I keep thinking of all of the other situations I've had, even a full on garage, it gets a little messy, and I was never there long enough to take advantage of it. So it's this funny thing where I'm like, I could do this right now. I mean, price aside, maybe I'm priced out of it, but let's just say I could figure it out. Yeah, I could figure it out as long as I was here.
Yeah.
But then I could get kind of screwed, where imagine I move somewhere that's otherwise perfect, but I can't plug my car in, and I have to go somewhere to charge it. Oh my God, what a nightmare. So
I feel like everything is such a leap of faith, and then you have to just make the best decision you can with the information you have now, and then things will change. I mean, that's just inevitable. So no matter what you do, there's going to be a point where you're going to have to pivot or,
it's so
figure
true.
something else
Yeah.
out. It's
And
just
who knows, maybe
life.
I'll go get a Honda Civic again.
Yeah, I remember your Honda.
Those were, I had 3 of them. Before I ever had another car, it was just something happens with a Civic, I get another Civic. Maybe I'll do that again. Who the heck knows? But anyway, so yeah, if you have any vehicle advice for me, and everybody always does, I'll take it. Hi at havesuchagoodday.com. If you happen to be in our Discord, we can have car discussions there as well. Heather, I know you're no stranger to leasing cars and getting cars, and comparing them and wishing that they had a certain feature and liking the new features that the new cars do. It's just,
Oh my God.
it's never
But
ending.
you so get used to it. It's funny when I first, I have a CPO, a certified pre-owned car now. So I'm out of the lease world, but, and it feels kind of good. I'm kind of excited to, I guess, be more legit. But yeah, I have this peanut butter upholstery, inside the interior.
It sounds sticky.
I know. Well, it's funny when the salesman told me he called it peanut butter, and I was like, I don't know about that. It sounds weird, but I absolutely
The color
love
of peanut
it.
butter.
Exactly.
Because I'm like, what, you got to slather on the peanut butter. That's the only way the car works. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. And when I first got the car, I was like, oh my God, it's like I love everything about this car. And now it's like, feels just like whatever, because you get used to how smooth it drives and all the bells and whistles, and then it's like not that exciting anymore. I wish you could keep that. It's like keeping that new car scent, like you can't really hold on to those things, or keeping your vacation in a bottle after you come back. You can only do it for a certain period of time, and then things start to feel rote. Know what I mean?
I know. It's funny. It's like that with so many things, isn't it?
It is.
Like, yeah, the car, great example. Or, a shiny new whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then
it's
you're
old.
just sort of like, or you're just like, it's normal now. This is a thing that, I interact with regularly.
Yep.
My car, I do have to remind myself, like, I love this car, but it's, I often do all sorts of things in it and I never think about the car. I'm just like, I have to go somewhere. So I go. I'm constantly, I look around and I'm just like, I gotta get this thing vacuumed out again because there's just dog hair everywhere. Or like I spilled my LaCroix in the center console and it's like sticky looking, and there's
it's a vicious cycle.
It
Well, at
really
least it wasn't a
is.
kombucha.
No, it wasn't. Although that has happened, and boy,
Yes, and
is
that's
that
bad.
a scent that's not great to linger, especially when the car gets hot.
Oh God, terrible.
Yuck.
Well, Sarah, I am in a house renovation rabbit hole right now. I haven't really talked to anybody for like a week. I've just been, oh boy, wow. It's a whole thing. I always heard over the years people who are renovating their houses. I never really related because I was a renter like you. Never really knew a lot about, faucet installation or like renovating your bathroom, tile work, like all of these things. And I am in that mode right now, and it's actually really fun, but it's quite a rabbit hole. Currently, I am geeking out on paint swatches. I've just been that person, like that total annoying person that's like going around to every room trying to figure out what color I want my bedroom. We definitely have to paint most of the walls, the interior walls. The outside of the house has been painted recently. It's been re-roofed. It's been repiped. There's a lot of projects that I'm so thankful have already happened. I'm definitely new to the owning thing, so it's a little daunting. Like you were saying earlier about renting a car, I always felt kind of like, well, this isn't my house. I don't really have to worry if the toilet breaks. I just call the landlord and they have to deal with it. Well, now it's really my responsibility. So it is a little daunting, but I've really had fun with the kind of creative aspect of the kind of interior stuff. And I've been going to my favorite websites and kind of getting advice from brands and things that I like online. It's been really fun to figure out what my decorating sensibility is. I think there's a lot of trends. There's like the less is more thing is really big right now. And I don't really feel like I always thought, I love modern. I really do. I love modern, but I need a little mix of farmhouse and bohemian and cozy, and a little mid-century modern in there for sure. But I really, really like kind of a utilitarian feel. Like I don't want it to be fancy, but I want it to be good quality. There's a certain style that I like, and I think a lot of it has to do with kind of how I was raised and sort of in a kind of cozy artistic environment, I guess would be maybe the best way to encapsulate it. But I'm spending the week deciding on my colors, and I really enjoy the names that they give to these
Totally.
colors. It's so fun. And I'm really starting to come across the same names, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to revisit those beiges. And so I'm currently really excited. I'm going to do some kind of taupe in the bedroom. I've always wanted to do that. And the current names of the taupes that I'm interested in are really neat. One of them that I really love is called Pashmina. And it's funny how these names sort of grease the wheels, because you're like, oh, that's a cool name. Like, I want that, you know? And if it's a weird name, then maybe you wouldn't go for it. But there's Silver Fox and Fawn Brindle, which I don't really know exactly what that means. Maybe like the hair on a fawn. Nimbus Gray, Gray Cashmere, Himalayan Trek, Upper West Side. So anyway, I'm going to be going
Upper
to pick
West
up some.
Side.
I know. I'm like, what?
Yeah, all the, it just screams taupe to me.
That one's a little bit odd, but the other ones are really nice and cozy. So I'm going to go pick up some paint after we record today. And I've been looking for decorative knobs, because the person who moved out like took her really fancy knobs with her, so I have no knobs on my drawers. Yes. So I'm like, wow, the world of knobs, I didn't know it was so vast.
Oh yeah.
But I realized that I'm not. It's funny, there's certain things that I wouldn't call myself fancy, because I don't really like the glammy kind of stuff, but I really do. I like the kind of European tile meets a little bit of a bohemian, colorful, I guess. I don't think I'm strictly kind of like that modern, clean lines, totally Scandinavian kind of vibe. I like a little bit of that, but I'm going to try to meld my different decorating sensibilities and see what happens. And hopefully I won't mess it all up.
That's a fun project. You should talk to my mom, also a paint watch lover. And there have been many a time where I'm at her house and she's like, okay, so let's look at paint swatches, because and think about it being on this wall, where I'm like, oh my God, Mom, they all look the same. I've got this, I'm not totally in the same bucket as you, because like you said, there's like things like, new sinks and appliances and painting the walls and things that, as a renter, sure, you might have some say in that, but less so.
Yeah,
and,
totally.
when it's your own house, it's different, and you want to put more thought into it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do, for example, okay, right now I've got a bunch of rugs. Most of them are actually in my studio because they're big and they don't fit in my living area. But I've got a rug. It's an 8x10 rug. It's kind of where my couch is anchored and coffee table and everything. And I've had it for years. And it's just always been in a high traffic area of former apartments. And it's starting to fall apart. And, it's not just like having a dog and stuff like that. My cat doesn't even scratch it or anything, but it's just, there are certain little spots where like no amount of Resolve, spray and like blotting and whatever. It's just like, it just looks kind of crappy. And I would get it steam cleaned, have somebody come over and, give it a good once over. But it's like, even the edges, when you look at the corners, like it's all kind of falling apart. Mm-hmm. So like, if you lift it up off the floor, like there's just all this stuff kind of, trim that's hanging off, and, like the rug pad underneath is like, I keep finding like these little creases where I'm like, is it grazing? And I'm always moving my coffee table, like depending on where I'm sitting. And so it's a mess. And I am trying to find a rug that is, it's cute, right? Because it's like, it's sort of a big statement piece. And, so you want a rug that you want to look at, and it's not too busy and not too boring and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. But more like, it's a rug that there's going to be dirt on it. It's got to be somewhat easy to clean. So the color matters. Cause I'm sort of like, I want a white shag rug. That's so me. And I learned years ago, it's like, it's just gross.
Especially with a dog.
It just, with a dog, it's just a no-go. But even before, what I would just have friends over and I'd like forget to tell them to take their shoes off, or I like wouldn't want to be rude, and I'm just like, that's a dirty shoe on my white rug. What are you doing? So I'm looking at a variety of rugs, and I'm kind of just casually looking. I'm not going to buy one anytime soon because they're kind of expensive. But you mentioned these styles, right? And I don't really when you say bohemian, I'm like, I understand that that's a style that people use to describe a look, and I'm like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Show me some stuff, and then I'll be like,
sure.
Oh, I get
I'll
the vibe, but I don't know. Not you. What I mean is
someone.
What I mean is just if I see some photos of a collection that people call bohemian, I go, oh, sure. Okay, I get it. But that word doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
Scandinavian kind of mean something to me if you think of like, oh, like clean, like IKEA, but like nicer potentially. And, you know, or like mid-century, which is, you know, all the rage and has been for a while. It's like, yeah, that's a lot of like West Elm stuff and like less Pottery Barn, maybe more like CB2. So it's like, I kind of get it, but I don't, the terms are like, they're a little murky to me, but I do know someone will have, like, for example, my mom has these rugs in her house, and it's like, those rugs would not work for me because they're like traditional farmhousey.
Yeah.
And they're nice, but they're like, no. They would not, they're just like so wrong for me, which is really interesting because I'm like, I like the rug, but it would like ruin my little, you know, my living room area because it would just like, the colors are wrong, draws attention to the wrong corner. Like it's funny how that stuff it turns into a really personal thing.
It's really fun. And I think that's the part that I love the most is like really like, what is my style? And I think, I mean, to really define bohemian in a couple words, I mean, I would say it's a bit unconventional and just artsy, I guess. Kind of reminds me of my mom.
But even that doesn't sound like anything. I'm like, no. Art is, I mean.
I know.
What kind
you
of
have
art?
to just Google it.
Yeah.
Well, I will continue reporting back on my renovation saga. And if you guys have any comments, notes, questions, possibly email us at hi@havesuchagoodday.com.
Indeed. I know you are not the only homeowner, Heather, that I know who's kind of constantly going through this whole thing. Like, all right, what are we going to do with this? We said we wanted, you know, a open concept kitchen, but there's a wall here. Like, when are we going to like really, you know, get down to the studs on that
constant.
project?
And this is, I'm telling you, I'm getting paint for just the bedroom and my office. Right now, my kitchen is Velveeta cheese yellow. Well, you would also call it marigold, so maybe that sounds a little better. But I get where they were going with it because it's kind of bright and cheery, but it's a lot. It's just like I don't. It kind of stresses me out, so I need to change that.
Yeah,
the kitchen is
those
challenging.
are the sorts of things where, especially with a kitchen, right? Because it's like kitchens. It obviously depends on how much storage you have, but kitchens are busy. Right? Because it's like, you got stuff, you know, and you're looking at olive oil and there's some onions and pots and pans and like dish towels. And so it's like, it sort of already has like color and activity. So if you've got, like a very bold color, it's like, well, how much wall are we covering? Like, is it cool as an accent, or do we have to like put up a bunch of art in here so it's like not too Velveeta?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I know that I'm going to go crazy. Like, this is the kind of stuff where, because it's not going to be like it's going to be done tomorrow. It's going to take me all year, if not years, to make this place mine. And I'm not OCD, but I definitely will, things will bother me. And I'll be like, I've got to do something about that bathroom, which that's another story for another day.
Yeah. We've talked about this before. Like, I sometimes have a hard time, you know, where some people are like, they can visualize how great the project will be on the other side of a bunch of hell. And I've never been super good about that, which is why I get lazy and like, I make like impulse purchases. Yeah. Instead of being like slow and methodical is how I get to
It's hard for me
my
too.
destination. But like, I will, you know, we've all known somebody who's like, they might, you know, using the house example, like buy a fixer-upper, which like needs a lot of love, and they move in and they deal with the house in its current state and like, you know, work on one room at a time. Yeah. You know, and like, it's like you like move in because of course you're like moving in, but knowing that sometime in the next couple of years, you're going to have to do that kitchen. And then it's like, you just, I don't know. I mean, it's, to me, I'm like, oh, it sounds so stressful. And then you have to like move everything out of the kitchen after you've already moved in. But again, I have renter mind. So
oh my God,
permanency is hard for me.
Me too. And again, this is my first permanent rodeo here. So I'll let you guys know how it goes.
Well, it's going to be fun.
Step by step.
It's going to be fun. You're going to learn a lot, and you're going to, you know, with every project you inch closer to, you know, the house of your dreams.
This is true.
I mentioned Discord earlier in the show, but for patrons at our $5 per month and up level, so anything $5 or above, per month. And by the way, thank you to everybody who is already a patron. But yeah, for those of you at our Discord tier, we are in our Discord with all of our lovely Discorders chatting about all sorts of things throughout the week in between shows. We'd love to have you join us there. So if you've been thinking about becoming a patron, now's the time to do it. However, you can be a patron at any level, $1 a month. It's, if that's something that you feel like you can part with, please do so. We've got over 100 patrons. We love you all. We'd love to have 200. I know that sounds crazy, but hey, we got to 100. We can get to 200. To learn more about how you can directly support the show and keep us afloat and keep us going till the cows come home. And I don't have any cows, so we'll go forever. Patreon.com/have such a good day is where to find out more about that.
Oh my gosh. Actually, speaking of Discord, Mike Mills, he's one of our regulars.
What up, Mike?
He's super cool. We talk about movies and technology, and I know he builds apps and all kinds of things. Well, it looks like there might be this is an interesting review that I think popped up about our show, Sarah. It's called, the subject line is "The First Podcast I Play" from a Lennon 2020. This is the first podcast I play the day a new episode arrives. It's got just the right tenor to keep your humor up and get simpatico in trying times because the subject matter is a great mix of light and real, if you know what I mean. A week in the lives of two longtime pals in slightly different parts of the same world. Also, not too short and not too long. May ye remain Sarah and Heather forever.
Oh, that's nice. Thanks, Mike.
Cute.
That's a lovely review. Yeah. Also, if you enjoy the show, or even if you don't, I mean, I'm not telling you to give us a bad review. That would be sort of a weird thing, weird action item for you. But we do love reviews. It's just
they warm our
hearts.
It
does. It really, because we're like, oh, you like us, you really like us. And if you ever want to hear us talk about something, it's like we're obviously open books, but we're always soliciting ideas.
And sometimes we might prattle on a little bit. Apologies for that. So you can just fast forward if you need to.
Don't fast forward. You're going to miss something great. That's where I tell you all my Bitcoin secrets. It's the part you fast forwarded through. Oh, look, I'm getting a spam phone call.
Nice.
My
the
wrist
day
is
has
ringing.
begun.
Oh, God. Oh, my gosh. I can't even. Well,
this
listen,
world.
before I start to wax
Unravel.
poetic about robocallers and how I feel homicidal thoughts sometimes.
Oh God!
When
Me too, Sarah.
when I get too many of them in one day, on a Sunday evening. What the hell? Who is not only answering their phone at that hour, but being like, oh, it's a robocaller. I'll go ahead and press 1 and get on the phone with an agent and have them sell me something weird.
Okay, this is something we should really unpack in the coming weeks because, are these people really thinking people are going to pick up and be this gullible at this point? I mean, you know what a robocall is at this point.
Well, not everybody does, or they wouldn't do it, right?
That's
I mean,
true. I
spam
guess if you're not
email
that
still
tech-savvy.
gets, people,
You're right.
who don't, or there's a language barrier, or there's an age issue,
You're
or
right.
whatever. It's it still works in capacity.
This is true.
That's how scams stay alive.
All right, Sarah. Well, I think, we've got a pretty long show here today. But it's wonderful to see you, and as always, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. In fact, I hope you have such a good day.
Heather, I hope you have such a good day as well. Anybody listening, give yourself a little self-hug. I'm doing it right now. And just squeeze it. Give it a squeeze. And keep your shoulders and your elbows healthy. And Heather and I will be back next week to do it all again.
We will.
Until then, I will remain Sarah.
And I will be Heather forever.
Have such a good day.